All right, everyone, we'll go ahead and get started. It is good to have everyone here for our monthly work session of the Athens-Clarke County Mayor and Commission. We'll go ahead and begin this meeting with a roll call.
Here.
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 All right, thank you, Madam Clerk. I appreciate that. All right, y'all, we have 4 items on the agenda tonight. We have 2 kind of internal items, I guess I would call them. Discussion, if there were any questions of the TSPLOST 2023 Project 32 regarding traffic signage. That'll be questions only. And then we'll move on to the composting pilot program that our solid waste department has been involved in. And then 2 partnership activities. First, from Dr. Jennifer Scott here at the Clarke County School District, the Youth Development and Violence Prevention Partnership recommendations, and then following that, some workforce development recommendations from David Bradley with the Athens Area Chamber of Commerce. So I just want to begin by asking commissioners, does anyone have a question that you'd like to pose to staff about that traffic signage program that was part of our last TSPLOST offering? Commissioner Houle?
Thanks, Mayor. Yeah, I just had a couple.
You may want to get up on your mic a little bit, too.
Okay, yeah. Get right up on this microphone so that you can hear every breath. So, yeah, my first question was, I think it's on slide 7. It gives a figure for the total cost that staff thinks this program would cost annually if we were ideally funding everything on a sustainable life cycle. And it estimates the figure per sign at $500, which is the cost of a stop sign. But my understanding was that a lot of this program was for street signs, right? Like names of streets signs, which in my mind would cost less than a stop sign because they're so much smaller. So I don't know if you can enlighten me on where that figure came from and why a stop sign, which is quite a bit larger, is like the average.
Yes, sir. The stop sign was chosen because it was a sign that everyone recognized and everyone would identify with. That is the average cost for that. We do have, and the reason we gave that as an average, we have a number of signs that are much larger and much more costly than a stop sign. And then, of course, we have the street name signs, which are certainly much more economical than a stop sign. So we felt like that would be a middle-of-the-road price.
Okay, thanks. And yeah, I guess so it makes sense to me reading this now that this is about all of the signs, but when we were putting this on the TSPLOST list, I was imagining this as primarily about street signs because we had a lot of complaints from neighborhoods about their signs being super faded, and talking with TPW staff, we learned about the huge backlog here. So could you just help me understand, I had a little bit of trouble kind of going through the slideshow because we didn't have the benefit of a presentation to understand like how street signs factor in, because they're obviously not going to be the top priority in terms of safety. But given the funding limits in TSPLOST as compared to the ideal amount that you present here, are we expecting people's street signs to be replaced anytime soon, or is that something that's still needing more funding?
Yes, sir. The signs that are in poor condition theoretically will be the ones replaced. Our objective is to define the condition of the signage. Hopefully we'll have enough funding to replace them all. If not, then we'll go with the key signs, the ones that are most important, such as the stop signs and those. And street names certainly are important too. If they're so poor you can't read them, we would recommend that they'd be replaced.
Okay, thanks. And then my last question for you, I kept it to 3. So it sounds like the CityWorks, that robot truck that goes around and monitors the pavement, is what you're using to get the signs, but is that comprehensively getting signs enough that are high up off the ground, or is there still sort of a backup for people to report or something? Like what's the methodology beyond just that truck, I guess is my question.
We've been told that will be all inclusive, that it will capture all the signage.
Okay, good news. All right, thank you very much.
Yes, sir.
Thanks, Tim. Thanks, Commissioner Houle. Commissioner Myers?
I did see an interesting number in here, and that was at the current investment levels fund signage replacement on a 165-year frequency, when the recommended national, guidelines lifespan is 10 years. Is this investment included with that 165? Does this improvement, what would be needing to fund this signage replacement fund regularly to get it anywhere near 10 years rather than 165?
Yes, great question, Commissioner. Thank you. I believe we included that. If I can take a moment here and find it. Mike, do you recall that?
I think it's on slide 7.
I found it.
1.6 million
Yeah,
per year.
That's right. I just had to read the next page.
And please don't make me have to beat Gene in terms of seniority and have to stay 165 years to see this through. I'm sorry, Gene.
All right, any further questions from the body about the sign replacement program? All right, Tim, thank you so much. Appreciate all the work you do over at Transportation and Public Works. All right, move on to discussion of our composting pilot program. And so we have Joe Dunlop from Solid Waste with us. Afternoon, Joe. Good to see you.
Hey, good afternoon. Thank you all for the opportunity. I will be co-presenting with Dr. Evan White with UGA's New Material Institute. I am the Waste Reduction Administrator for the Solid Waste Department, and we'll be talking about a just completed residential compost collection pilot project. I'll go over the purpose and the history, some of the benefits of composting. We do have some summary with recommendations and a brief overview of intended next steps. So basically, compost is a product. It's manufactured through controlled biological decomposition of biodegradable materials. In other words, it's controlled rotting. It's a very natural process. We're confining it, accelerating it, and turning out a product on the back end. Why it matters, we do have a waste reduction goal, and it's been determined that about a third of what enters a modern landfill could have been composted. You add that to the 40% that could have been recycled, and that's about 3/4 of what goes into the landfill could have been diverted relatively easily in this community. So it's a big chunk, and after traditional recycling, bottles and cans and cardboard, organics is the next lowest hanging fruit to make a meaningful difference, a good bang for the buck. And at the end of all that, compost is an excellent soil amendment. If you've ever used our product in a garden, it's pretty much rocket fuel for gardening. Composting, is that better? We've been composting here since early 2011. We got our permit from Georgia EPD. And composting does figure prominently in our own solid waste department plan, as well as we are members of a regional solid waste management authority. It figures in that plan as well. Most recently, the pilot ended. I won't try to read this entire slide to you. Evan, if you'd like to talk about funding.
Thank you, Joe. Thank you, Commission, for your time. My name is Evan White. I'm an assistant research scientist from the New Materials Institute at the University of Georgia. ACC was our partner on this program. And I'm here to tell you a little bit about the motivation and why we're interested in doing organics recycling at this city level. The funder of the project was Walmart Foundation, the family, not the company, not Walmart Inc. And they have an initiative called Project Gigaton, which is a strategy to reduce 1 billion metric tons from their vertical supply chain, everything from raw material suppliers to the people that produce the plastic packaging that goes into our waste streams. And the incentive here is to increase organics recycling on a national scale, because about 55 to 60% of all of our food waste goes into our landfills that comes from our household level. About 35–45% comes from industry. So the big need is curbside collection and the awareness campaigns to expand these programs. About 60% of all the food scraps comes from residential, so we need to improve that metric. And there's an opportunity to expand Project Gigaton by expanding organics recycling nationally. The zone that we looked at is shown here on the screen. It's basically Normaltown Boulevard and Cobham neighborhoods. This was about 400 homes, or it was exactly 400 homes that were serviced. The area was about 2,200 homes that were available for the program, and it ran from February, first week in February to the first week in May, so it was a 3-month program, and it was at no cost to all the participants. ACC did a fantastic job of capturing some data in terms of the participants. Veronica Schultz here has actually been our champion in capturing this data. And one thing I'd like to bring your attention to is these pie graphs at the bottom. If we look at the number of submitted surveys versus households, the majority of people that participated submitted a survey, 61%, which is outstanding for a public works survey. And when it comes to complaints about odors or the stinky issues that normally deter people from composting, 80% said they had no issue. And when it comes to awareness, education, and communication satisfaction, 95% of participants thought we had appropriate communications. So that's a success story by ACC as the main communicator. I'd like to include this quote from one of our participants. You'd be surprised how much joy it can bring a preschooler, and also that's the educational level required to participate. When we look at the measured impacts, we have some demographic data in terms of household incomes. We have some information on the collection service suggested fees from participants, what they're willing to pay in that red square, and also how they'd be interested in paying for it. So people are interested in seeing their property tax dollars do more work. They're not against other models such as landfill tipping fees, which has been attractive on the West Coast to help pay for organics recycling programs. So I'll leave it at that, and I'll pass it back to Joe to finish up the discussion.
All right, so at the end of the 3-month pilot, we collected just over 19 tons of compostable material. I think it's safe to assume that otherwise would have gone into the landfill, or worse, in my view, contaminated the existing recycling programs. The cost that we charged back to the Walmart Foundation was $29.25 per household per month. And that is for once a week collection of the steel can that you see there. There was really not a lot of contamination. We were pleasantly surprised to that. The one issue we had was paperboard. So think cereal boxes, beverage boxes, maybe some junk mail. So we'll refine our messaging on that. That's not a bad thing. It's a good product to get out of a pilot. As Evan said, there was 400 participants, about almost 1 in 5 households in the 2,200 pilot area elected to participate. And we had more that we continued to get inquiries after the registration deadline. So there's a lot of interest out there. The reactions were overwhelmingly positive. We continue to get just anecdotal stop you on the street type interactions with folks who really like the program. We diverted almost 18 metric tons of CO2 equivalent from the landfill. And for recommendations, Solid Waste Department recommends expanding voluntary collection of food scraps from the residential sector, either through ACC Gov or through franchised haulers. In FY25 budget, we requested a compost education specialist. It was not released in the mayor's budget, but that will be needed to expand in any meaningful way compost diversion. I'm a little close to this one, but Veronica did a tremendous amount of outreach on behalf of our office. That's not her job, and the existing educators had enough on their plate. Spring is kind of the silly season for us. As far as financing all of this, considerations could be through the tax base or through a landfill tipping fee or some combination of those two. We will be working with UGA on a more refined cost analysis and expect a proposal from the Solid Waste Department during the FY26 budget cycle to expand organics diversion. So the pilot is concluded as of a couple weeks ago. What's next? We will continue to promote our no-cost drop-off locations. There are a half dozen around the community. We will be adding a 7th in the city of Winterville at the existing recycling drop-off site, so that'll be our newest one. And we're going to continue to let residents know that they have 2 fee-for-service options in Awesome Possum and Compostia, 2 small private organics collection companies here. And we hope to leverage the findings of this pilot to secure additional external funding from the Walmart Foundation or perhaps someone else to scale up organics diversion. That concludes my presentation. I'm happy to answer any questions you may have.
Thanks, Joe. I appreciate your work on this along with the whole department. Got some questions beginning with Commissioner Fisher.
Thank you, Joe, and appreciate it. And I'm really excited that we're doing this on a local level. I know we have been doing it at UGA for years when I was there, so I'm glad that we're doing it locally. My question is, once we roll this out, how much of the community, though, will be able to participate? Are we going to sort of treat it like we do our trash pickup, or is this going to be sort of like community-wide for us with the composting?
Our hope is that it would eventually be community-wide. The pilot, the no-cost drop-off sites, my intent with that is to make as much of a geographic representation around the community, make those accessible to anyone. And then if we can get it to curbside, I would like to see everyone have an option to participate in that.
Yeah, and that's sort of my point. So, you know, if we do a community, will we ask our residents to sort of get the compost to where it needs to go, or are we going to be responsible as an organization to picking up those compost? And I guess that's where I'm going a little bit for it. Because right now with our trash, it's pretty much in the city, and our recycling within the city. So I just, you know, I guess whenever we roll this out, we really need to be clear with the folks outside the city limit how we would do compost, if it's going to be picked up or would it have to be taken to a certain area.
And that's a good point. We, the solid waste department, don't operate outside of the urban service district. So for the residents outside of the urban service district, the general service district, it would need to be some of the either franchise haulers or the smaller businesses I described. Thanks.
Patrick?
Thank you. I love the work that you do and what staff does, and thank you for this pilot program. So, and LRC will be looking into countywide trash pickup. Hopefully they'll pick that up soon. Okay, the trash bins, are there any, for the compost bins, excuse me, are there any smaller ones? Did residents complain about how cumbersome they may be?
Evan, you want to take that? Or Veronica?
Yeah, so the great question. There were plenty of complaints about the metal bins and their function. Absolutely. They were prototypes, and we chose using the metal bins for really 2 reasons that weren't explicitly described here. One is we don't want microplastics entering our food supply. This compost is oftentimes sprayed on agricultural lands and used as a soil amendment. We don't want direct inputs of plastic, so steel is a natural choice that has a recycling outcome for the bin itself. It has value if it's destroyed or flattened by a truck. And also, the Walmart Foundation was interested in supply chain resiliency, domestic suppliers of raw material suppliers of steel. The manufacturing hub is Barron's, which is based out of Minneapolis, and Die Sheet Metal and Bogart was the company that helped do the modification. But it was definitely not ideal. If we want to scale the steel cans to 500,000 units, then they would be much more slick looking, a single punched piece of steel that has a hinge and a handle, so it'd be less cumbersome for sure. So that needs to be improved.
So moving forward, if we expand it to the community, we'll be looking at other options.
Oh, absolutely.
Okay.
We're not against using conventional bins for the sake of expanding the organics program. This was a special interest from the Walmart Foundation. If I can get funding again for another program, that might be another special interest.
And it was not in the budget, but what does a compost education specialist, what will be an annual salary for said person?
I'll let Joe take that one. Thank you.
It would be in line with the other program education specialists in our, probably around $40,000 a year.
Thank you.
Melissa?
Thank you guys for this program. I've heard lots and lots of positive feedback from my constituents. I actually represent the neighborhoods that this program is running in, and people seem really happy about it. They've like flagged me down on the street to let me know how much they like it. And I've got several emails. So I'm really grateful for it. And it's interesting to hear the local supply chain origins of the trash cans. That's really important, I think. I met staff out at West Broad Market. They were out there educating the public about the program and giving away free compost. So that was really exciting too. I've been composting in my backyard for 25 years now. I'm interested to know how, I mean, I know our landfill has a finite lifespan. How much might this expand the lifespan of our landfill if it were to go countywide?
No, that's a good question. I haven't done the math on the time. I can tell you our landfill currently has about 37 years capacity, and that food scraps at about 13%, and then other compostable materials, that gets up to about a third of the material. Are you never going to get 100% participation for anything probably? But years, how many years, I wouldn't hazard a guess.
John?
Yes, thank you. So it says the cost is $29.25 per month per household. Does that cover the cost of the trucks also, or is that just the cost to pick them up?
That covers all of our costs for this, the operator. I will say the truck, technically it does not cover the cost of the truck, I don't believe, because the truck was funded by a state grant, a separate state grant that purchased the truck for the solid waste department.
So that would have to be a capital purchase to add these trucks?
I believe so.
Okay. Thank you.
That would be after the current truck, which we just got.
So the existing truck is part of our fleet now.
Yes, sir.
Okay. Jesse?
Yeah, thanks. Picking up on that. So this request in the budget for the specialist position, is that the only thing standing between this continuing forward and not, or would we also need to supplement that with some additional capital purchases like John was asking about?
For the immediate future, I believe that's going to be the only ask. Down the road, the truck is part of our fleet now, and we've incorporated the existing truck into our fleet. Down the road, there may be some asks to maintain that fleet and that additional vehicle.
Okay, so if that position were added, we'd be able to expand immediately, but then you'd be back next year with probably additional things to try to go further with it. Is that?
I don't think it would be as soon as next year.
Okay, at some point down the road.
Yes, sir.
Okay.
I don't
Yeah.
mean to be coy. We just got the truck, and it's a brand-new truck, so we hope that it'll last. It's a 2024 model truck, so we hope it'll last a while.
Good stuff. And then I'm glad that Commissioner Link asked about the landfill lifespan. That's simmering in the back of my mind all the time here. I don't know if it would be worth staff's time, but I think it would be helpful to maybe understand if there could be some kind of estimate on the breadth of this program and the impact that would have on the life of the landfill, because that then becomes an economic argument as well, which could help make it make sense in the budget.
Of course.
But
We can get you that.
I really appreciate this presentation, and I'm taking note of that budget request for sure. Thanks.
Thank you.
Carol?
Yeah, I'm looking at page 11, the number 4, the cost analysis by ACC staff and UGA data. And again, I can't hear all my colleagues' questions that thoroughly, so I may be repeating something. But that cost analysis, is that going to include the anticipated extended life of the landfill if this was a highly successful program?
I hope that it does. I will push for that to be included.
But in that, who's doing that cost analysis then?
It will be shared between Solid Waste Department and UGA.
Okay, so we would get that information about the land use. And then I heard Commissioner Houle asking about and others asking about that position, but there'd be a more thorough proposal in addition to that position next year that we could anticipate.
Yes, ma'am.
And then 2 other practical things. On the compost program, did the residents also get some sort of bin for inside the house?
No.
No, so they were, okay, my daughter has municipal composting where she lives, and so I'm used to that program there. And the other thing is on the no-cost compost drop-off. I'd sure like to see one over on the east side, like close to where all the recycling bins are over there, close to the police department. Is that a possibility, or is there a reason why there is not one there?
It is a possibility.
Yeah.
To date, there hasn't been one there because we're limited. The truck that we just got in January, I think December, January, makes it easier for us to get around. Now that the pilot has concluded, we've made the decision to add one in Winterville. I hope that to happen within the next week. And certainly we can look at that area.
Yeah,
I'm happy to try one there, that makes sense.
I think there are a lot of residents in that whole Gaines School, Barnett Shoals, Cedar Shoals, who might take advantage of a program like this if it were closer for them.
Thank you.
John?
Do you know what the capacity of the truck, one truck would be? So this was 400 homes. Is that about the max capacity, or what would the capacity, like as we added, how many trucks would we have to add, or one truck be able to handle it?
I think the one truck could handle the urban service district, not all on the same day, of course, but if we had once a week collection, Monday through Friday, I'm sort of getting out of my lane and into the collections realm, so that's a little bit of a guess on my part, but I feel like that's achievable.
Thank you.
Any other questions? All right, Joe, thank you very much. I appreciate the work that you've done. I appreciate the New Materials Institute being a partner in this. Thanks, y'all.
You're welcome. Thanks for your interest.
All right, we are going to see next Dr. Jennifer Scott here from the Clarke County School District. As everybody is aware, for our ARPA-funded categories, we had several collaborative groups, and one of those was the Youth Development and Violence Prevention Group, and Dr. Scott was kind enough to helm that for us, and so she is going to give us some ideas about where we may want to proceed from here.
Good afternoon, everyone, and I am hoping that, there we go. Okay, so thank you again for allowing me to come to share with you regarding the work that our task force did to address youth development and violence prevention. So I am going to start just by giving you a general overview of the work that we are doing and what I hope to share with you today. So within that, understanding that our purpose today is to provide you with an overview of the work of the Youth Development and Violence Prevention Advisory Committee. Also, we want to make sure that you understand the process that they went through in the work that they did in order to come up with the recommendations that are being presented to you today in consideration of ways in which to address youth development and to decrease or eliminate the violence that we're seeing within our youth. So with that being said, just to give you a little bit of a background of the work of the team, the participants were identified by Mayor Kelly Girtz and our school board, immediate past school board president, Lakeisha Gant, and those names were identified back in December, and they received notification as well as correspondence in February, late January, February, where they were asked to identify their availability to meet and serve on the task force. But within that, we also gave them a general overview of the work and the charge that had been given to the task force as it relates to the youth and violence prevention. From that, we were also able to gather and get them thinking about their thoughts around how best to address it by posing a question to them within that first correspondence that they received. And that question was, how would you go about improving or increasing youth development and violence prevention in Athens-Clarke County? And there were three themes that really prevailed around that, and that was the increase in youth voice around this, also making sure that there was a trauma-informed approach, and it also addressed the mental health needs of our youth. So as a result of sending out that correspondence, we were able to identify 3 dates that worked for the majority of the 11 citizens who were asked to participate within this task force, and those dates were February 7th, February 21st, and February 28th. We met each evening, starting at 5, meeting from 5 to 6:30 on each of those dates. And listed here, you'll see those members of the 11 who were invited, who were able to participate in each one of those sessions. With that, the goals that we had within the task force as it was presented to them was to develop a problem statement, and taking the work that was done by the joint meetings held with the ACC Commission and the Clarke County School Board members back in August of 2021 and September of 2023, and combine that information in order to come up with a problem statement and desired outcomes. So we started by making sure that they knew what the conversations were by sharing the minutes from those meetings. They had an opportunity to unpack and think about what was some additional considerations that needed to be made in conjunction with those minutes in order to come up with a problem statement. And then once they had the problem statement, what would be the desired outcomes? If we were to address this problem, what would be the outcomes that we would be seeking? And if we wanted to get to those desired outcomes, what would be the action steps that would need to be taken in order to meet those desired outcomes? So with that, this shows the problem statement that they were able to develop. And it was the underserved youth, young people in our community do not have equitable access to resources or opportunities that promote belonging and positive youth development. So within that problem statement, the desired outcomes, if it were to be addressed, would be to a decrease in youth violence, decrease in disproportionality, and increase in graduation rate, access to resources which prepare them for post-graduation success, and that's looking at enrollment in college, enlistment in the armed services, or employment. So with that, and as a part of these sessions, then there were a lot of conversations, a lot of considerations, a lot of themes that arose from that, a lot of discussion around the many nonprofits that currently exist within Athens-Clarke County that address youth development as well as family support. There were a lot of conversations around the underserved and underrepresented populations and how best to reach them. There were also conversations questions and themes around what has been done in the past and what were the successes that were experienced, why, if it was successful, why did it stop, or what were the things that kept the barriers that prevented it from being successful. There was also conversation around how do we meet the interests and needs of youth today, because what may have worked in the past may not work today based upon the interests and needs of youth today. So with that came out 3 recommendations. One was coalition building, recommendation 2, out-of-school youth development, and recommendation number 3, post-graduation skills development. So when we're thinking about the first recommendation in the coalition building, thinking about what's already out here and making sure that there is a way in which to bring those resources together. When we're thinking about the many agencies and nonprofits, then how can we bring them together? So the recommendation was to actually develop an office whose role is to make sure that anything that is rolling out related to youth development and violence prevention does so in a cohesive manner and collects multiple resources as well as agencies, bringing them together to work collectively towards a common goal. This could be in the form of events that are provided as well as programs that run across multiple period of time or a time frame that has multiple events or activities associated with it. Their second recommendation was out-of-school youth development, and that goes right along with the coalition. And so within that, what would be some of the youth development activities that are provided outside of school? So we know within the Athens-Clarke County School District, all of our elementary schools offer after-school programming. There's also extracurricular activities within our secondary schools for our students to take part in, but that's not necessarily reaching all of our students. So what are we able to do beyond what the school district is able to offer? And so doing that in the form of athletics, but then also recognizing that there are some students who maybe gravitate more towards the fine arts programming, and making sure that that's done in collaboration with leisure services and what's being offered, as well as Clarke County School District. The other thing related to out-of-school youth is to make sure that we're thinking about what are the barriers that are preventing some of the youth from being able to access that. And so whether it be transportation, how are we utilizing all of the resources in order to address those barriers, but then also campaigning and making sure that families are aware of what's available for their youth. And the final recommendation with this is also a post-graduation plan for every student. So we know that in Athens-Clarke County, we do have our Athens Career Academy, which does offer some job training and workforce development, but every student is not able to or interested in taking part in that, but every student needs to have a post-graduation plan. So as a part of the recommendation is ensuring that there is programming out here that promotes an opportunity for youth to really explore their options post-graduation, whether it be, again, enlistment, enrollment in college, or going right into the workforce. But as a part of that, making sure that they are developing their skills that would prepare them for a job and in a field that is of their interest. And a huge piece of that is a mentorship program that would support students and pairing them up with adults who may have similar interests to that student based upon what their long-term goals are. But ultimately, it's to create a plan, a post-graduation plan for these students that would include goal setting and development of a plan of how to make sure that they are reaching those goals that they are setting for themselves as a part of that plan. So the next steps that we are asking from the commission is to consider each one of these recommendations and what you might want to do within the recommendations, as well as the allocations of any funding associated with moving forward with the recommendations. The task force itself does not have a dollar amount that they are asking for related to that, but nor did they look into the cost associated with each, but did want to just think about it from the lens of the full dollar amounts that had been shared with them associated with youth development that was set aside previously by the commission. So with that, I will take any questions you may have.
So, Dr. Scott, in terms of operationalizing the next steps and recognizing that, while these are all kind of important categories for advancing the, opportunities for youth and reducing violence, would there be a recommendation that joint staff between ACC and CCSD kind of work together to refine these recommendations into sort of a fundable path?
Correct. So that was a lot of the discussion as well, is how can we make sure that the two are working together, because so many things do overlap into the school district as well. And so that was something that was discussed within the task force, is making sure that as we're moving forward, there would be consideration within the commission, but then also within the school board of how to move forward and working jointly within that.
Thanks for that. And I might ask kind of our management team, do you have anything to add to that, just in terms of kind of what the prospective actions are from here forward?
No, we'd like the opportunity to talk further with the commission about that, and the representatives, Commissioner Fisher from there, along with Dr. Hooker and Dr. Scott, further about good next steps forward.
Other questions? Commissioner Fisher.
Thank you, Mayor. And I want to thank Dr. Scott for convening a committee. And it was a lot of ideas discussed for us. How can we cut down on violence in our community? And I think, again, like you said, I think the next step is how that collaboration looks like for us with the school district and with my colleagues here, for us how we want to move forward. I do like the idea about possibly having a violence prevention office, and I guess the thing with my hesitancy is, where would we house that, and what type of impact would it make? Would it be with the school district? Would it be with another entity? So those type of things I think we need to hash out on moving forward if we decide to fund any of this. So I just wanted to share that.
John?
Thank you. This is exciting, but thank y'all for your hard work on this. One comment, I would hope that you're planning on coordinating with the presentation we're having next with the workforce development as it pertains to post-graduation skills development, where everybody's on the same page and working to help these students gain the skills and find the jobs.
Absolutely. I would say that that's a given. I know that Mr. Bradley serves on our ACCA board. I also sit on the board as the CCSD representative, and so we want to make sure that we are working in conjunction and collaboration.
Great. Jesse?
Thank you, Mayor, and thank you, Dr. Scott, for being here. So I just want to clarify real quick. You said there were 11 appointees, but the list of names was the 7 who participated. Is that right? So there's 4 who didn't. Okay. I guess the first one, I'm thinking this falls probably especially under recommendation number 2, but a lot of our discussions in the development of this ARPA bucket, and sending this out, kept mentioning programs like the one I referenced, but it's not the only one like this, the street level gang outreach program that's in Multnomah County, the CDC funded thing. But this kind of idea that you have a non-police entity, and it's a non-school district entity too, like some kind of organization that's got people, including some folks with lived experience in gangs and things, who are doing this kind of youth mentoring thing and trying to interrupt kids from being involved in gangs. So I guess I'm curious if that was part of the discussion in developing these recommended initiatives, and why it didn't make the list, I guess.
So I think that we did not discuss specific organizations that are currently here as far as putting them in the recommendations. More so, they discussed making sure that there was an opportunity to bring those to the table, and that would be the work of the coalition, is to make sure that they're identifying those organizations that are already out here working to support our youth, and how can they come together and work collaboratively towards a common goal as a part of their work. And so while we did not discuss specific organizations. There was more of a general conversation that there are several nonprofits and other youth advocacy organizations that do exist within this area.
Yes, I hear you on not discussing specific organizations. I guess I see this more as like a task for an organization and identifying whether there are any in the community that could do this or if we would need to somehow seed the money for it. I mean, we've got till the end of this calendar year to use this ARPA money, right? And my thinking, that informs this question, but also in the years up to this meeting here, has been that, this is an opportunity for us to either seed a program in partnership with an existing organization in town or try to get something going off the ground that might be new and novel, but we've got this funding opportunity that can do something new and novel. So absent that being specifically listed here, I guess maybe this is a question for the body to think about whenever we get together to talk about next steps, but are we essentially just giving up on that if we don't have it listed here, or do we need to make sure it is specifically mentioned as one of the initiatives so that it's emphasized? Because otherwise, this language is general enough that it could just be all sports programs, and then we wouldn't have anything like this.
My read is that, you've got some broad recommendations here, and that certainly among the kinds of things that could happen in a violence prevention office is that sort of very street level outreach activity. I've certainly recognized that that's been one of the things that in mid-sized and very large cities has been successful that we have really not been doing in a formal way, maybe in an informal way that's happened occasionally, but not in an organized manner that I think all of us would have in mind, where we're really reaching down to those 12-year-olds and 14-year-olds that unfortunately many of us have known who've become violent or gang involved.
Well, thank you for that, Mayor. I guess without wanting to do too much, bulldozing over what the committee has already discussed, to me it feels important, if others agree, to try to get something specific about that listed in here so we make sure that that is a focus. Otherwise, I'm worried that it'll perennially be something that we bring up in discussions like this but never makes it into a document and doesn't actually get funded. The only other question I have, it struck me as odd, the focus on military enlistment repeatedly throughout the presentation and kind of in the recommendations. When I think of violence prevention and then I think of what people in the military go off to do, they seem like an odd pairing. So, and often, military enlistment is something that I think people see as an alternative because they're struggling to find another way. So I'm curious what the thinking was behind emphasizing military enlistment as one of the 3 main routes we want to send our kids to here.
And for the most part, I believe that the task force just identified that because that's in general one of the 3 areas that students would go into postgraduate that would be considered as options, that they would either be employed, enroll in school, or enlist in the armed forces. So I want to say that was their thinking, and that in general, that's what you typically see when you think about the 3 E's and the push that you see from many school districts.
Okay, well, thank you for that clarification, Dr. Scott. I guess I'll just, I respectfully disagree with us emphasizing military enlistment as one of the 3 things we want to send our kids off to do. Sending our kids off to die in wars abroad does not sound like the thing I want to do with our youth development and violence prevention money. But thanks.
I've got, I think I saw Commissioner Myers.
Yes, I had a couple of questions. First, thank you so much for this. And I think there is a lot of overlap with the next presentation and also the work that Commissioner Fisher and I have been doing with the Boys and Girls Club Delinquency Prevention Initiative. And I think a lot of what's presented here are overall developmental guidelines holistically for keeping young people from getting involved with violence in the long term that are necessary. And I think the violence interrupting, or that's a phrase I'm using, having learned that at a presentation, is more of a critical, at the moment kind of intervention. And so I'm not sure where we're going as a group or with our money from the ARPA, but I am interested in looking how we can do that. I know the the Mentoring Young Men program is probably the closest I've seen to young men with lived experience working with youth, but probably something even more focused than that. I did want to ask actually a couple of first on recommendation number 2, I think, in terms of awareness. I keep thinking when I'm in the workforce development work that I'm doing with Commissioner Taylor and this kind of work with youth, that we already have our neighborhood leaders who are out there in the community. And if we do have a comprehensive list and a directive to our neighborhood leaders to get more youth involved, that might be a good outcome to be emphasizing as well with that resource that we have. I did want to ask about the recommendation number 3, the post-graduation skills development. Two things. What is the present non-completion rate for our students in Clarke County schools?
I would have to get back to you on that. I don't know that off the top of my head.
Okay, because I think we have to be aware as well that we have a lot of students. We have a significant number of students who don't complete still, and probably those are more likely to get into violent situations. And I'm also just curious what is presently going on in the schools to sort of create post-graduation roadmaps already with the students. Does the school district have something in place already as a prep for students leaving?
Yes. So starting as early as middle school, then students do take what's called the youth science assessment, where it helps them pinpoint areas of interest that would allow them to begin to build out goal setting of what they might want to do post-graduation. And then that goes on with them into high school. They're able to take it again for a second time, because sometimes what you like in middle school changes in high school as you're exposed to different things. Our high schools also provide advisement weekly. So all of our high school students are assigned an advisor at the high school, and they attend their advisement sessions in small groups on a weekly basis, where they have an opportunity to look at their goals, what they're setting. They do a lot of social emotional learning lessons within that time. They also have an opportunity to look at their progress towards meeting graduation requirements, specifically at their current caseloads and where they stand as far as grades, where they might need additional support. And then the parents are asked to come in twice a year to meet with that advisor as well, to hear their child's progress, but then also to identify next steps to support them as they're thinking about their post-graduation plan and their progress towards meeting that. So there are things that are happening within our counseling department to support that work as well.
So there's already like a post-graduation plan going on for seniors that the counselors are working with?
There is, and so it's more their advisors that who meet with them on a regular basis, but it's facilitated through the counseling department.
Yeah, well, I think I meant advisors, but that's fine. Thank you.
And Commissioner Myers, to your earlier question about completion rate, the way the state measures it now is by the 4-year cohort, so the folks who enter 9th grade together, and the district is about 80%. It ebbs and flows, but that contrasts with it having been just over 50% 20 years ago, so there's been enormous growth. So, Commissioner Fisher?
Yeah. Just want to sort of remind our colleagues that, and Dr. Scott gave those dates. You know, we only really spent 3 weeks together, and we're trying to come up with a plan, so I don't want us to jump to the conclusion that we had all the answers. So this is just sort of a snapshot of the individual that was in that planning, trying to come up with some things. Now, I'm going to push back on my colleague about military. Not only do we talk about sending our kids to fight in other wars, but it also leads to leadership and also job opportunities when they get out. So I think the military is a good option. A lot of times those options are for kids that look like me, that may not go to college, that may not do some other things. So military is a good career, very good career for individuals because it not only leads to leadership, but also skills training and an opportunity to come back to their community and become good citizens. So I'm going to leave it at that. We won't get into an argument about military, good or bad, but it does provide good careers for individuals that want to go into that field. So,
Commissioner Houle.
Yeah, I guess just a final thought on that to clarify my thinking. You know, I certainly hear what Commissioner Fisher is saying about the value that a lot of people get out of military service. It certainly leads to great lives for many people, but it leads to great lives for the people who survive it and come home. And I think a lot of times the folks that Commissioner Fisher is speaking to who end up enrolling, it's because they don't really see other good options to get a good job or to get into college or to pay for college. So if we're thinking about how to invest the money we have from ARPA and otherwise, because this is eventually going to get funded through general fund dollars or some other source, I would think that we'd do better to fund programs that get our kids into secondary education and or into the workforce without having to go through an intermediary step of serving in the military. And especially when we're thinking of a bucket of money that's been specifically earmarked for violence prevention. The military can do a lot of great things for a lot of people, but fundamentally it is also armed forces that, you know, go into combat or are in service of people going into combat. And I feel pretty deeply uncomfortable with us helping recruit people into that with money that's supposed to be about violence prevention. I think the value that the military can offer the people who survive it is the kind of thing that we should be trying to offer our children without them having to go to the military to get it.
I'll just say briefly before I turn it over to Commissioner Davenport, just having worked in the secondary education world, you know, most often what folks in that space are talking about is some defined plan for a young person as they exit high school. And obviously, you know, that can involve a variety of things. Post-secondary education, you know, can involve immediate entry into the workforce if somebody has strong skills. And sometimes the military is the national service opportunity. Obviously, there's other kinds of national service, but that's the one I think that most frequently people are familiar with. Commissioner Davenport.
Thank you, Dr. Scott, and all. This looks good. We're inching away. We're going to get there and hopefully tackle this issue. Were there any talks amongst the group about poverty, parental guardian support, and how that can help prevent, you know, people from going astray?
Yes, absolutely. That started from day one, and just looking at the level of parental involvement, and also looking at the barriers that may limit levels of parental involvement, such as having to work. But then also taking into consideration that involvement can look like different things, depending upon how you might define it. And so that was definitely a part of the conversation. There was a lot of conversation around the economic barriers that prevent some opportunities for some of our youth, and that became evident, which is why they specifically talked about the underserved and the underrepresented youth as well.
Thank you.
Commissioner Myers.
Yeah, one more question for the mayor or for the managers. I mean, what is our path forward now with designating funds towards youth development? What is our timeline, but actually what decisions are we making as a group, and when? What kind of decisions? Do we have thoughts and ideas to share on that from our leadership?
Just following up on my earlier comments, it's clear we need some additional refinement, and exactly what that looks like, you know, I think could take a variety of forms, but Blaine, I'd be interested in your perspective.
Sure, and for the benefit of the public, so there's been some really good work done here, and also with workforce development, and there is some work, Commissioner Myers and Commissioner Taylor, that's going on with another group on workforce development. And those are really the three final processes that are undergoing. And so we wanted to allow them time to give us the best of their thinking, which culminates in today's presentation. So this is a bit of a jumping off point. As was noted earlier, the end of this calendar year is a deadline to have those funds committed, and they have to be spent by the end of 2026. If there will be an RFP associated with this, that RFP needs to go out no later than late summer. And that just on the heels of the break that we're going to take. So we need to have some conversations fairly quickly in the wake of these two presentations about that allocation of funds. Of course, this body, the Mayor and Commission, will be the entity that approves these funds. So I'd like to ask that we consider, Mayor, if we need to come together in a brief 2-hour, 3-hour meeting with the Commission, outside of a normal work session or voting meeting or agenda setting session, to finalize your thoughts on that now that you've heard these. And so perhaps once we return from the break there in late July, we might consider setting up a time to where we can get down to brass tacks and get these funds committed.
Thanks for that, Blaine. Any other questions? All right, Dr. Scott, we really appreciate it. Thanks so much for being a strong collaborator with us. And last presentation of the day is going to be from David Bradley with the Athens Area Chamber of Commerce to talk about some of the workforce development recommendations that they've been working on at the same time that we know we've got our internal group that Commissioner Myers and Commissioner Fisher, and Commissioner Taylor are chairing.
And good afternoon. All right. I do want to say thank you for the opportunity to be here with you today. We have made on the slides on the presentation that was sent earlier, there have just been a couple minor modifications, but not significant. So thank you so much for the opportunity to speak with you today. In 2022, through the receipt of American Rescue Plan Act funds, this body sagely noted that workforce development is a key priority for the residents and businesses of Athens and Clarke County. And 11 months ago, you'll remember, you partnered with us, the Chamber, in funding a community workforce development strategic plan. So today we present to you that strategic plan, along with our request for providing seed funding to implement that plan. And y'all, you will see the Athens Area Chamber name on this slide, on the slide presentation, on the information that you have in front of you, and we do take very seriously our role as a primary convener and community champion. But please know that this plan is a culmination of wide and diverse conversations with business leaders, representatives of educational institutions, employees, neighborhood leaders, those looking for work, and many people that are sitting in the room right here have been involved in the process since we started. So we present this plan with and through the support of many Athens-Clarke County organizations that are seeking to create a valued and valuable workforce. So the mere mention of workforce development often leads people to only think about work done in the educational environment. And you will see that we really do endorse expansion of career and workforce development efforts in our educational institutions. And this plan does address long-term and mid-term needs, but we also have to focus on what we can do to help expand our workforce for the job seekers of today. Lightcast, a global leader in labor market analytics, reported that as of March 31st, we had 12,167 jobs open and available in Athens-Clarke County. We have more job opportunities on the near horizon, as represented by some of the employers that are here today. Our Chief Workforce Officer will immediately seek creative means to connect employers with those looking for work. We will build that connectivity through using neighborhood leaders, area churches, and ask for, frankly, your help in helping get connected to people in your district that are looking for work. The job portal that we will discuss in just a few minutes is designed to provide direct support for job connectivity immediately upon its completion. So we have branded this campaign Athens Achieves. And our mission is to create and sustain the bold infrastructure that develops a pipeline of skilled workers for current and future employers in our community and helps attract and retain the quality industries that we desire. You'll see that this really has been an incredible joint initiative of business, industry, education, nonprofits, local government, all working towards one common goal. And now our plan. You'll see our steering committee, we developed a steering committee that it really provided direction and oversaw the development of the plan. And our working committee took a much more hands-on approach to considering areas of focus. As you can see, we had a diverse group of committee members that have been meeting, gosh, for the last 8 months. And we took a very intentional approach to the development of the plan, asking ourselves, what impact did we want to have? We want to, one, help attract and retain businesses that pay well, offer benefits, value a skilled workforce, and want to be a contributing member of the greater Athens-Clarke County community. Secondly, we want to connect people with high-demand skills and sustainable employment. And we want to sustain Athens-Clarke County as the economic center of Northeast Georgia, the fastest growing region in the Southeast. So our plan has 5 primary goals, as you see here. But I mean, very legitimately, we're only looking for seed money for the first 2, so those are the efforts that we'll focus our attention on. Our first goal is through the job portal and navigator, and preparation is to build a sustainable organization. Obviously, we need to set up a 501c3 organization and a board of directors. We'll immediately hire a chief workforce officer who will have responsibility to work with all of our partner organizations to assure that we have alignment and accountability for all the work for which we are committed. We'll also contract out with a grant coordinator to assure that we are efficient and compliant in managing these ARPA seed funds. But the cornerstone of Athens Achieves is the innovative job portal. So we use the word portal because on the surface, that's what it is. It's a portal. But it's so much more than that. The simple aspect of applying for jobs, guys, it can be daunting for anybody. And we looked at ways in which we could make that easier. We all have probably applied for jobs in one way, shape, or form online, and we never know, we might not ever get a response. We're going to address that as well. We're going to make it easy. We're going to have an advocate for every job seeker that is seeking work. Again, we'll provide a personal advocate or navigator for everyone that applies for a position through Athens Achieves. Available jobs in Athens-Clarke County will be noted throughout the site. People seeking employment will obviously be urged to explore opportunities, and that's where the program differentiates itself. Very shortly, after someone enters their information into the site and applies, they'll be contacted directly by one of our personal navigators. Based on information provided and through direct dialogue, the navigator will commit to serving as a liaison with the prospective employer and assuring that that status of that application will be readily available to the prospect and to the employer immediately. Secondly, provide insight to that job seeker about, based on their skills, what other options might be available that they had not thought of. And thirdly, to suggest and connect the applicant to training opportunities that would enhance his or her skill set to find desired employment. Y'all, searching for jobs is hard. I was reading at 3 o'clock this morning, devotional reading, and so weird. I don't know whether it's karma, providence, or coincidence, but I read something from Brian McLaren. It said, if we can see a likely path to our desired outcome, we have hope. If we can see no possible path to our desired outcome, we have despair. This job portal and the role of navigators is to provide hope to those who have lived in despair. So the second area in which we'll be focusing on and our goals are education and training support, and this is where we have many of our partner organizations with whom we will subcontract work. And you'll see here, we'll create a stakeholders work group represented by all service participant groups. And it's critical. We've talked about alignment, but y'all, we have got to get aligned in our workforce development efforts if we're going to maximize our opportunity for success. So it is important that we align with Athens-Clarke County strategic targeted industry sectors and build collaboration, support, and accountability. And we'll support the development of essential life and leadership skills through Clarke County School District and key service providers. On this slide, it's important to note that we will support the development of academic skills and career pathways to develop the skilled workforce needed today and tomorrow. So we talk about elementary school. The single most important foundation for workforce readiness skills is literacy. We want to work on what our workforce looks like tomorrow. We have to build, we have to create and expand our literacy work. And on this slide, we'll note some of the programming as it relates to middle school, high school, and post-secondary. And we believe that creating pathways for second chance employment is imperative. Men and women that have served their time in incarceration and/or recovery are often an overlooked portion of our workforce. Our proposal requests expanding second chance employment programming through Goodwill, connecting people to existing resources like ACC's Second Chance Desk, and a second chance career hiring fair coordinated by Envision Athens. I think the mere focus on second chance employment opportunities and the profile that we expect to give it will help expand those opportunities and reduce barriers to hiring. So these next two slides deal with communication and marketing and business and industry engagement. Again, we're not asking for any resources along those lines. But we do want to talk a little bit about long-term funding. We view this request as seed money. It's not or long-term or operational funding. A primary function of the Chief Workforce Officer and the Board of Directors will be to find private and grant funding to secure ongoing success of the program. So our overall request is for $1,921,680. The job portal component of this request, which also includes the hiring of a Chief Workforce Officer, job portal navigators, and grant coordinators, is just over $1 million for 2 years. You'll note that for our education and training support, we'll note 8 community partners programming designed to focus on the education and training and second chance employment. And we have key performance indicators for everybody that's involved in this process. You challenged this community to address some of our most pressing issues that without a creative, innovative response would continue to prevent our residents and community from thriving. Since May of 2023, we've worked with employers, educators, job seekers, organizational partners, just to come up with that creative, innovative, and measurable plan. We believe that crafting a valuable workforce is the most effective way to combat generational poverty, to grow our economic vitality, and to expand well-paying, fully benefited jobs that allow all Athenians the opportunity to fund the quality of life they desire. Thank you.
Thanks, David. I appreciate it. Got a few questions. Commissioner Link.
Yeah, I'm looking at this list of 5 priorities here.
Yes.
And I recall hearing something about the statewide #1 needs, industries of need, and social services and healthcare were at the very top. And healthcare is certainly on here, but is social services wrapped up in that healthcare and life skills
Absolutely. So it
Okay.
would be wrapped, so you're exactly right. Social services is a critical role, and that would be wrapped up in life skills and healthcare.
Okay. I'm also, I know one of our greatest needs in local government is drivers, folks with CDL licenses, and I'm not quite sure where that falls in this.
I think the objective would be there with, what our job is going to be to try to connect people with jobs that are available. So that would ultimately fall into the job portal component, and having navigators that would be able to steer folks to the incredible number of jobs that are available, not only in transportation in Athens-Clarke County, but the totality of Athens-Clarke County, as well as other employers in the community.
Okay, so would that fall into one of those 5 priorities?
It would be under the job portal and navigators is where those jobs would be listed for immediate hiring.
Okay. And I don't see environmental sciences on here. We just talked about the need to hire an environmental educator for our compost program, and that's certainly a growing field and of greater need in this world.
I'm sorry to interrupt you, guys. So those 5 primary goals, those aren't job sectors as much as they are program of work for us. So that jobs portal and navigation is a resource of all available jobs with a direction to try to move seekers into those available jobs using the skill sets that they have.
Okay. So can you tell me why those 5, like what was the process by which those 5 priorities came through? I mean, craft beverages is on here, which I know we certainly have an industry here, but I don't know that it's tons of jobs.
This is the selected targeted industry, industry sectors that have been determined by the Office of Economic Development, and I believe the Commission as a total. So, I mean, we're trying again to be completely aligned in using the 5 targeted industry sectors.
And I know we've received some previous communication about sort of the growth trajectory for things like biotech and craft brewing, and just given the volume of employment, I think that's how those ended up kind of rising to the surface. Obviously, they're not comprehensive. There are other jobs, but I know that through the department, those have been identified as the ones where just in terms of the volume of jobs, we see the greatest growth. Commissioner Davenport?
All righty. Thank you, David Bradley. First of all, read your devotionals at bedtime, not at 3.
Good for you. I love it.
I'm glad you were awake at 3, and that was needful information. So the way I see this, and I thank my colleague Culpepper for helping envision this, is we have a community of people who need quality paying jobs, and then we have a lot of employers who need to hire high quality applicants or employees. So this connects the two.
Correct.
This brings the people in our community together to say, hey, you know, you need a job and you need to, we want to pay you well, and we're going to provide the training, and this employer is going to work with you, and these community partners are going to work with you to get that education, that soft skills, the training, the certification, so you can fulfill those jobs. Because apparently there are a couple of jobs in Athens area that are looking for those skilled workers, and we have a lot of applicants out there who just don't have those skills to get those jobs. Is that correct?
That is absolutely correct, Commissioner.
And this is similar to a project that was tested through Alabama Works, which is a huge successful program in Tuscaloosa. Sorry, I didn't.
I can't say it either. That was fun.
That town out to the west of us. But it's a viable, thriving program that takes low-skilled individuals, train them, and provides them high-quality, high-paying jobs, and improves poverty, improves the community, and it makes people make people quality of life better. So this is how I think we all envision this. I think this is a wonderful program. I look forward to moving forward with this.
Thank you, sir.
Commissioner Culpepper?
Yes, thank you, David. This is extremely exciting. It gives us an opportunity for this community to really be an economic center for all the training and development for the workforce in the area. As we know, there's plenty of jobs coming, and they'll keep coming here, but we've got to have the workforce. And I believe y'all have done a great job addressing all stages of the workforce, whether it's the students in first, second, third grade, the middle schoolers, the high schoolers, the ones in postgraduate, but also the unemployed and the underemployed. And I think that the job portal is going to be vital to not only connect them with the jobs, but also connect them with training opportunities so those who are working a certain wage, they can be directed to places to get additional skills so they can earn higher wages. I think this is a great thing.
Thank you, sir.
Commissioner Myers?
Button. Okay, I have several questions. First, thank you very much. Excited to see this a bit of time after our Tuscaloosa trip here. So anyway, I got 5 questions here. One, is there anything that we currently have in Athens that attempts to get to do something like this in terms of a portal? It seems like a no-brainer kind of thing. Are there some other disparate ones in different places that do a little bit already?
What a wonderful question. We do have a job portal that is on Invest Athens website that was jointly coordinated by Office of Economic Development and the Chamber and with the support of Georgia Power. And we did this, I think, maybe 4 years ago. The differentiating factor in that portal is we have all the jobs listed, and it is almost one-dimensional. I can apply for that job, and let's see what happens. The value of this web portal is having somebody on the back end come in and basically serve as a liaison, we'll call it a navigator, to work all the way through that process. When we were in Tuscaloosa just recently, we were captivated by a dialogue that a navigator had with somebody who was in second chance employment and who had beat his head against the wall trying to find a job. And through the portal, very similar to what we're talking about, he found the first job he'd had in 20 years.
So that's good to know here. I also remember in Tuscaloosa, one of the big things was that how business and industry their commitment was so firm and so serious. It was not just, yeah, sure, we'll support you, but there was a firm commitment. What kind of tell me about the commitment you have from business and industry here, and does that include any financial commitment?
So the financial commitment at this stage, we don't have a financial commitment. We just simply haven't sought it because we've been focused very specifically on the American Rescue Plan Act funds, and this is purely seed money. But the people with whom we have been in communication with and who have committed engagement but just haven't committed actually a dollar amount would be virtually every major employer that you could imagine, whether it's Caterpillar or Piedmont Athens Regional. They see this as a way to save substantially in the funds that they are spending to employ people that don't fit the job.
In the Tuscaloosa setup, are business and industry contributing to the finances here, the ongoing finances for the portal and the staff that's involved?
Absolutely. So the difference being in Tuscaloosa in 2014, I believe they started with a relatively small budget that was almost exclusively funded by the business community, and in the subsequent 7 or 8 years, they began to steamroll and make things really crank out. We have an opportunity right here, right now, to jumpstart 5 years ahead of time, but we need this support in order to get that jumpstart. I have no question in my mind that we will have private and grant funding that will support this program as long as we can run it.
So it would be clear that this would be a one-time financing from the local government for this?
Absolutely.
Okay, next question. The Leadership Me program that you referred to is, I know that I went and saw that presentation from the principal at Barnett Shoals and was very impressed by that. Is there already a commitment from the school district to expand that to other schools, or?
Another wonderful question. The Leader in Me platform is based on the 7 Habits of Highly Effective People by Stephen Covey, and it really is what we see is probably the most effective means to teach essential skills, previously maybe known as soft skills, into all facets of our education system and beyond. 3 years ago, I believe it's Clarke County School District was able to have had 4 schools that became Leader in Me schools. 2 weeks ago, I believe I can. 2 weeks ago, I think the Covey folks has, in addition to the state of Georgia, had made a substantive pitch for expansion of those programs here at Clarke County School District that could be as big, perhaps, as we want it to be.
Okay, and so we're up to 3. We're on to 4 now. Goal 4 with the adults. It seems that the focus is on second chance employment, and I am total support of that. I am concerned, though, that I didn't see anything spelled out about outreach and inclusion of adults who were not previously serving incarcerated in the prison. So what kind of outreach is there? I mean, where's the focus on the adults, the people who are already working?
So the creation of the job portal and the marketing of the job portal, that will be very directly driven to people who are of all shapes and sizes and ages and histories to get engaged in employment through that job portal. And we are going to rely on, we have a wonderful relationship with the Minority Business and Nonprofit Association, who is committing to work with area churches, area faith-based organizations that already have some of the basic workforce development opportunities available. Maybe it's transportation, or maybe it's daycare, or whatever, sort of corral the faith-based community to understand the value of the portal. We'll do the same thing through one of the most important transformational focus groups that we had was with neighborhood leaders this year.
That's good. Yeah.
And we'll use the neighborhood leaders extensively to talk about with everybody in their neighborhoods what's transpiring. But I also want to impose on you to make this work. We've got to all talk about it, we've got to all believe it, and we've all got to make it work. This is the one time we have an opportunity to change the workforce dynamics in this community.
Great, because I think there are a lot of opportunities for adults already working to get better jobs through maybe very targeted training, and if they are aware of what's available, that would be helpful. And finally, the last thing is on the page where we get to the total request of 1.9 million, there's a lot of specifics here, like the Clarke County Mentoring Program, Books for Keep, and there are specific numbers. Do we have program descriptions of what is being anticipated?
I do have them, but I'd probably be better off to supply them to you in written form as opposed to just articulating.
Great, I'd appreciate that.
Right away.
Thank you.
Commissioner Houle, and then Commissioner Fisher.
Thank you, Mayor. Thanks for being here, David.
Yes, sir.
You probably know one of the things I'm going to ask you about, but I got a couple questions before that. So just a couple things to note. If I'm looking at this latest ARPA report from our staff correctly, we've got $3.8 million remaining in the business development and workforce support bucket that we created through the ARPA program that this commission set up. So if we were to fully fund this request, that would still leave $1,883,320. But the first thing I kind of want to follow up on, I like that Commissioner Link brought up some of the sectors that we know are chronically underpaying. I mean, vacancy rates in our own departments help us understand where some vacancies are. And that to me points to a need, not just for maybe this program, but perhaps for ourselves and our own economic development department to rethink what our priorities are in terms of who we're trying to recruit. So I'm thinking about those social services that Commissioner Link pointed to. We of course know that UGA has a health campus coming, but they've already got a school of social work. And I think we could do a better job of pipelining people from that into some of the positions that we really need folks at. The hospital, the jail, corrections, our police department with the co-responder program, Advantage Behavioral. They're all in need of folks who get the exact kinds of degrees that are being churned out at the School of Social Work, but those folks aren't being recruited into those positions here locally. CDL drivers being another big one. And I also just wanted to raise up childcare is a thing that we're hugely lacking here and that I'd really like to see us focus on more. In fact, when we set up the description for this ARPA bucket, childcare was one of the specific things that we called out. I don't see that in here. I'm curious if I do see that there's the kind of early education part of this, but is there anything in this program relating to childcare?
Well, childcare is definitely a significant issue, a tangential but very important issue as it relates to workforce development. Regarding the 5 bullet points that were noted in the suggested use of those ARPA funds, we really tried to focus exclusively on high wage, high benefit jobs and connecting Athenians to be able to reach those jobs. And I know that one of the first bullet point is childcare, and I believe that the group that Commissioners Myers and Taylor are working on, we will address that.
Well, I am hopeful that will be the case.
I am pretty hopeful we will too. I think that's our charge.
And I'm also anticipating that whatever comes out of that group is going to end up, if this moves forward, dovetailing in some way with this. And so I'd hope that the childcare industry and specifically finding ways to pay people doing that work well will be part of that conversation. So I have a few things I want to lay out, but I promise it gets to a question. It's my last question. So, a positive trend here in Athens is that our poverty rate has declined. We were in the upper 30s, we're now in the upper 20s, at least according to the latest data I've seen from the census and things. That's encouraging in terms of the trajectory, but it's entirely discouraging because we still have a super high poverty rate. And about 25% of our jobs locally, this comes from what we've gotten from the Classic Center and the Convention and Visitors Bureau, is service industry and hospitality and retail. And these are sectors that chronically underpay. They don't tend to provide people with benefits. It's often employing people who are juggling multiple part-time jobs to work in those sectors. We also have a very low unemployment rate here in Clarke County, which is true for most of Georgia, but we're even below the average for Georgia. And so I think it's a telling correlation that we have these chronically underpaying sectors that make up about 25% of our local worker economy, and we have about a 25% poverty rate. In my mind, those two things are not divorced from each other. In my mind, they're actually very related. And we're talking, in this case, about working poor, right? People who are working and still living below the poverty line. So with a large portion of our workforce working in sectors that aren't going anywhere, I don't think any of us are expecting service industry and retail and hospitality to go anywhere. We've built all of our decisions around those industries persisting. But these industries historically pay below a living wage. They historically lack adequate benefits. They often put workers in vulnerable or unsafe conditions. And we're going to need to find ways to still support those workers and support the businesses that employ them to be able to offer them something better. When we came up with the language for this ARPA bucket, if you will, we were careful to specifically lay out that we were talking about business development and workforce support because we wanted to support the existing workforce as well as help develop businesses. And of course, the kind of workforce development that y'all are talking about here, I think is an important component, but in my mind, we don't meaningfully tackle the poverty rate in any way if we don't do this alongside something that uplifts these sectors that are chronically underpaying. And many of these employers are members of the chamber. So this brings me to my final threefold question. It's for you, Mr. Bradley, if you've got anything from the Chamber's perspective in this program. It's also for our staff, if they've got anything from the Economic Development Department, and for my colleagues, whether today or in the future, to consider with the remaining ARPA funds. What are we going to do to uplift those workers and their employers so that everyone working in this community can afford to live in this community?
Well, that's a fine question, Commissioner Houle. I think it's imperative. I don't know anybody with whom we talked with that is trying to pay the least and get the most. I think it's imperative for us to have conversations with employers of all levels to talk about what are the costs to having excessive turnover, and how do you work around that and create a dynamic economy that is good for everybody. I think there's still a lot of work to do. I mean, I think we just have to have that. We just have to begin to have those conversations. And we believe that with Athens Achieves, a lot of times we focus on exclusively the employees and what we can do for and with the employees. The employers, well, we believe with our Chief Workforce Officer, will also have a responsibility to have conversations with employers about those very significant, those issues that cost them extraordinary money in trying to, in some cases, and very few cases, pay the least and expect the most.
Commissioner Fisher and then Commissioner Myers.
Oh,
Thank you, David, for that presentation. As I look at this presentation, I've been in this community close to 40 years. We have never taken on a challenge with workforce. This can really be a game changer for this community. I think it's pertinent on our part to understand that what the economics look like and what we're trying to bring in. When we talk about biotech and healthcare, I mean, I think studies have been done on what this community can support, and those are some of the key industries that are looking at Clarke County. And I truly believe if we do this right way, and we got all these partners involved, like I said earlier, it can be a really game changer for us. So I want to thank everybody that served on the committee to get this presentation to us. I'm looking forward to discussion more with our colleagues about this, but I think it can be a win-win for this whole community. And when we talk about poverty, this is the way out. High-paying jobs, and give people opportunity to build economic wealth as they move their families out of poverty. So this is the way to go. So thank you again for doing this.
yeah. I just wanted to follow up on Commissioner Houle's questions, observations here, and talk about the work that Commissioner Taylor and I are doing with the group that we're working on. We have 3 subcommittees working on creating plans for moving forward, and one has to do with worker empowerment, one has to do with small businesses and worker cooperatives, and one has to do with higher wage jobs. When I'm listening to what was presented by the Chamber, David Bradley here, and thinking about the list of projects and strategies that were compiled from all the people talked to in our committee and outside of our committee, there's a lot of overlap with the higher wage initiatives. That's not the subcommittee I'm working on. So if we were to go through with this, forward with this, not through with it, into this, I would see that there is work that is being done that could address worker empowerment and address some of the issues that you're bringing up. It is clear we're not going to get, we're going to have service workers, whether they're in restaurants and food, or whether they're service workers taking care of our young children in childcare, or our elderly in home health care. There's going to be a lot of positions. Those positions are not going away. And I think I've learned some of the things that from these worker secondary co-ops that allow groups or individuals with small businesses and home health care or child care to come together to have better opportunities for more efficiency with their purchasing and with their services they might need, like accounting, that there might be ways to help those businesses. But I know that we're continuing to look for ideas and to lay out ideas that would help people with the already existing jobs and with workers to know their rights as well, and how to deal with mistreatment in the workplace. So we are working in that direction as well.
Commissioner Houle?
Thank you, Commissioner Myers, for that clarification. I think, we're thinking about next steps here. I mean, I'm hearing from a lot of folks up here that there's generally support for this kind of program moving forward. And, I want to share that I believe this is a valuable program to move forward on too. But I think I would feel more comfortable when we're thinking about a limited amount of ARPA dollars to go around, and this is taking just barely over half of them. I would feel more comfortable moving forward on this proposal once we also have more clarity coming from the task force that Commissioner Myers and Taylor are on about how the other money will be spent. Because what I would really, really hate to do is move forward on this, which is a good proposal, and not end up taking any meaningful action on these other things we're talking about before our hard deadline of December. We've got to have something in place by the end of this calendar year. And if we've waited our whole lives for this program to get off the ground, I would think we could wait however long before the end of this calendar year to approve this alongside whatever else comes out of that task force, because we're going to have to make kind of a zero-sum decision about what to do with that money. And I'd feel more comfortable knowing how much to put toward this, especially recognizing that this is seed money without contributions from any other participants yet. I'd feel more comfortable, agreeing to whatever dollar figure we're going to agree to here once I know what's coming from that other task force as well.
Commissioner Taylor and Commissioner Myers, just in terms of timeline, remind me, when do we anticipate having some recommendations out of your body?
I believe it was by August, at the end of July, August. I'd say, following up on what Commissioner Houle said, I'd feel more, my concern more is not specifically about the money going to this chamber proposal and not to some of the things we're working on. My concern is more that as a body here, we may decide to move more funds to items that are not workforce development or youth development completely into other areas. That's more my concern, that is ARPA money is dipped into when we're looking at the budget and trying to find other funds. So we're not going to be voting on this proposal. Even if it went forward, I guess we'd be voting on it at our June meeting with the budget. So I just don't want to, I'm just concerned among my colleagues of not wiping out that money with other allocations.
Thanks, Commissioner. And I guess I just want to affirm my interest in a couple of things. And one of those is recognizing that workforce development and economic health are a multifaceted phenomenon. Having worked for a dozen years myself in food service and retail work, before I was in anything that somebody contemplate as a professional position, my hope for every local economy is that those kind of low-wage positions are transitional, but not permanent for anybody. But I recognize that the kind of portal and the kind of handholding and the kind of programming that West Alabama Works has had underway and that's being proposed here, helps create that stream into higher wage employment. And I would also hope at the same time that we are going to devote some resources toward ensuring that people know what their workplace rights are, and maybe even kind of backwards mastering this conversation into some of that earlier sort of employment deriving activity that happens in public ed, as I know that Commissioner Taylor and Commissioner Myers have under discussion in their group. So I'm excited that we can do many things, and I hope this is among them. All right. I appreciate it, David. Thank you so much for being with us today. All right. So we will be back here tonight, but I would entertain for this afternoon a motion to adjourn.
Move to adjourn.
All right. I've got a motion from Commissioner Houle. I've got a second from Commissioner Fisher. All in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? All right. Thanks, everyone. We'll see you tonight.